Hey there, y'all. So I'm going to pop on here today and we're going to finish out Jupiter through the houses. We ended in the 7th house. We got kicked off yesterday, but if you want to go see the first 6 or 7 houses, I'll link it and pin it in the comments below after this. And it got kicked off, so there was a part 2 that was about 10 minutes long. So we were talking about Jupiter in the 7th house. Now I have this, and one of you commented that you have it. Jupiter's expansion. Jupiter brings an abundance of things. So if you have Jupiter in the 7th house, you may have a lot of potential suitors that have a lot of potential. Like for me, the issue is I have Rahu next to Jupiter. And I may have mentioned this the other day because I was telling a client she has Rahu, which is the North Node, but in Vedic astrology, he's Rahu in between like her Venus-Mars conjunction, which in Vedic astrology means a love marriage. So Jupiter in, Jupiterian marriages, which, in the 7th house is the house of marriage and partnership, can tend to have more of an official flavor. Not necessarily an arranged marriage, but a marriage that's going to have some sort of status to it. So if like Rahu's there, or depending on how Jupiter's aspected with it in your 7th house, it could bring you an abundance of partners, whether business partners and opportunities, or potential romantic partners that have, especially for a woman, real husband material. For men, it wouldn't necessarily bring you actual partners, but it could bring you a wife that is very high status, or you may not, because you would be more of the masculine energy of Jupiter, you may not be willing to settle. Like a man with Jupiter in his 7th house may not be willing to settle for a woman that's of like a lower status, whereas a woman with Jupiter in her 7th house may attract a lot of high status partners or mates. But yeah, like for me, I have Rahu there, so there's a lot of snakes because that's Rahu, that can appear like they're Jupiter. Oh, I had pulled it up yesterday because I want to see how far apart they actually are. I believe my son is like, I've said the wrong things a lot. Like yesterday I was reviewing and I say like Jupiter when I mean to say Sagittarius and things like that. But yeah, I should re-pull it up. I did it the other day on our live. I always forget. And then I pull up clients here. So, and also Jupiter in the 7th house would be the equivalent of having Jupiter in the sign of Libra. It made me want to go on this whole spiel about how the sun is at detriment in Libra. So KRS astrology, I watch him. He's like, if your sun is in Libra in the 7th house, it could be, you'll be like a great artist, but you could get involved with like a lot of kind of shady characters in life and get pulled astray. But this actually cultivates the creativity. Kind of like, think of like a graffiti artist or something, like they're out running the streets and there's, potential for, like I had friends that were graffiti artists growing up and they got busted big time and had to pay back all this restitution, I believe is what it's called, for, all the damage, because business owners have to paint over that and everything. So, that's the sun. We're talking about Jupiter. So even though they're out kind of doing it in this criminal way, they're actually still like becoming great artists. Because sometimes art has to be a little bit, on the dark side. It's like the tree of life, the light and the dark. Everybody's like always talking about the light, but you can't really embrace the light if you don't know the dark, right? So it's like some people, I watch a celebrity say this, like they grew up very sheltered and they're an actor, so they feel like sometimes it's hard to bring depth to their characters because they haven't really experienced life or any hardships. I mean, that actor that was saying it may have experienced like some like adversity in other ways, but not really like in life hardships. So, okay, let's see. Rahu's 11 degrees. Yeah, my Rahu is right above my Jupiter at 9 degrees. So actually Jupiter will kind of keep Rahu in line here, but that's like why I tolerate no BS. If you're a Rahu mate coming in trying to imitate my Jupiter, because right there, Jupiter is going to like kick you right back out. And then my sun's 21 degrees. So also like a Jupiter Sun conjunction creates a big, big, big personality. And I was listening to the KRS astrology. That's probably where I learned a lot of this with the dignity and the support. And the Sun and Jupiter, he was saying that. And one day I was just laying there and I realized, because I guess I meditate when I lay there, I was like, wait, because Kanye West at the time just would not be quiet in the public. It was before the last thing he did that everyone is like, you know, I'm not even gonna say it, but it was like 2 years ago where probably when he was like attacking Kim or something, he just wouldn't be quiet. So I was like, I wonder if he has a Sun Jupiter conjunction, and I went and looked, and sure enough, he did. But his is much, much tighter than mine. Mine's 10 degrees. And I think his might be flipped. So like if the Sun is below Jupiter, it can blow Jupiter up. Like the ego is the Sun, so it can really like blow up the ego. But if Jupiter is below the Sun, it'll kind of keep the ego in check, make sure that they actually know what they're talking about, you know. Because sometimes I could sound like a know-it-all. That's the Sun in Aries. So, you know, but Jupiter, usually people will find out, oh, she does know what she's talking about most of the time. Not right now, because I was telling you guys, with the Sun moving closer and closer to Sagittarius, which I said Jupiter, in my second house, or my third house, you know, it's ruled by Scorpio, but we're getting in the high degrees of Scorpio. It's just, the details aren't as important. It's just like an expansion, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, of me talking, just getting it all out there and trying to articulate it as I go. But anyways, so, but there's higher wisdom in it. So even if my details are a little off sometimes, because I think I even said to you guys like last week that my Sun was at like 16 degrees Aries. And then I'm thinking about it later. I'm like, why did I say that? That's not true at all. It's 21 degrees. Actually, this is kind of crazy, because in AstroSeek, it's pushing it out and making it look like it's in my 8th house. And it doesn't say, I'm not seeing a list here where it says where the planets are in the houses. Yeah, it just says Sun 21 degrees Aries in this list. Sun in Aries, Sun. Oh no, it's saying it's in the 7th house, but in the wheel, it looks like it's pushed into the 8th. See, that's why you got to be careful with some of the free websites. Because, anyways, so let's move along. If you have Sun in the, or if you have Jupiter in the 7th house, I'm curious how one of you commented that you do, that you have your North Node and your Jupiter there. So I am curious how your love life is. Like, have you been married to a high status spouse since you were young, or, you know, or how has that gone for you? Jupiter in the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of inheritances. Can't say it. Inheritances. I can't say it because I only have 2% power there. So one of my astrologists that did my birth chart's like, don't expect any inheritances, because the 8th house is other people's money. So if you have Jupiter there, it's kind of like the 2nd house. You know, the 8th house is the opposite of the 2nd house. So if you have Jupiter in the 2nd house, right, we talked about this yesterday, you may never need to want for money. 2nd house in Vedic astrology is your, the family that you come from. So it could also sort of be like just family wealth, or a solid high status background where you don't really need or want for money. But Jupiter in the 2nd is your own, 2nd house is your own money and your own income. So Jupiter in the 2nd house could just bring you a lot of money, whatever you do. But Jupiter in the 8th house could be a lot more of people supporting you. Or if you like did a fundraiser or GoFundMe, you could have just a lot more of a bigger response where people want to chip in and invest in your ideas and things like that. Taxes, though, you know, you could have, you know, be in a very high tax bracket. Now, 5th house is a house of children, and 8th house is a house of reproduction. So you could potentially have a lot of children, or just because it's the house of like death and rebirth, you could potentially I remember this lady from Colombia, and I don't know where her Jupiter is. I never did her birth chart, but I worked with her for a little while. And, and this was a long time ago. So, babies didn't, the birth rate wasn't, not the birth rate, the infant survival rate or whatever in that country at the time wasn't very good. So I think she had like 18 offspring, but only 2 of them grew into adulthood. Most of her children died in birth, like 4 or 5 of them, or miscarriages, or they died as infants. Because I've heard that a lot, like living in LA for a long time. I dated a guy whose mother had to leave his older brother in El Salvador when she moved to America, and she left the baby with, or like toddler, with her mother and sister, and the baby got sick, and just however the hospital system was there, he didn't make it. So it was very traumatizing for her, because she planned to just kind of leave him there, and they had property there and stuff. They owned, like, I don't know if it's restaurants or like food truck kind of carts basically, but they did pretty well there, and they had a lot of property. So it was traumatizing, because she thinks she's leaving the baby there with her mother and sister while she gets established. And I believe her sister had other children, and the baby gets sick, and the hospital system's not good. The baby's gone at like 2 or 3 years old, so Jupiter in the 8th house could indicate maybe like a higher mortality rate for children, but it could also indicate more children, like the 5th house, higher taxes, death. I wouldn't say with Jupiter so much, like other placements in the 8th house, you might be more like, if your Jupiter's in Libra in the 8th house, you might be like, it's like My Girl, where you're like a mortician and you do the makeup or something, because Libra, right, is beauty. Or it could be, you just might have to deal more with death, whether that be, people dying. And this is where the inheritances come in, I suppose. So, not to like call out unfortunate circumstances, and I don't know his chart either, but it reminds me, my friend's dating this guy, and she said when they started dating, he has this gorgeous house, and he basically inherited it, but when she met him, he was so lonely, like he was contemplating life or death. I mean, he would be a good example of Jupiter in the 8th house, because, and I, again, don't know where his Jupiter is, but, everybody died off in his family, all his really close family, and then the extended family came in and, like, took a bunch of stuff, but he inherited the house and all the money from his, like, grandparents and parents. So he was just sitting there lonely, like everyone he loved died off, and he was contemplating whether, he wanted to stick around, especially because when people die, like, the vultures come in. But, like, let's say his Jupiter was in his 8th house, that's why he ended up with everything, right? He had to deal with everyone he loves dying off, but he, doesn't have to worry about money, because Jupiter's wealth, luck, and expansion. And so in a way he got lucky, because he inherited everything, right? Could have gone, a lot of families like are structured where they're not going to leave everything to the child. They'll leave it to like one of the aunts or uncles or great aunts or uncles to like take care of the estate and distribute it, because they feel like a child might blow through it or screw it up. But he, if he had Jupiter in the 8th house, Jupiter's very noble. His family trusted him, or somehow by default, everything kind of just trickled down to him, because maybe, he was the only offspring left and it wasn't assigned anywhere else, like in a trust or anything. So this could very much be Jupiter in the 8th house. So if you've had a bunch of people in your family die off, but you were left a lot of inheritances, you might have Jupiter in the 8th house or something. Your Jupiter aspecting something in your 8th house. So I talk about this a lot too, like if Jupiter's in detriment and and how he's aspected. So like with me, Jupiter in Aries, it's like in the 7th house, my Mars is the ruler of Aries. My Mars is in Gemini, so that's sextiling my Jupiter. So my Jupiter is very well aspected. But like, let's say you have Mars rulership, but it's in, well, if it was in Scorpio, it wouldn't be really making any sort of aspect to Aries, but Scorpio rules my 2nd house, and Pluto, the ruler of Scorpio, is deposited there. I might actually be really wealthy, like a lot of people with Pluto in the 2nd house, like Bill Gates and stuff, or they're very wealthy. So it's gonna be some sort of aspect like that, where the signs don't even go well together, but the depositors, that's getting a little advanced, like the ruling planet and where it sits and yada yada yada. But anyways, so Jupiter in the 8th house, yeah, you could have more people die around you, could have to do with family, more inheritances, more death of children, but more children and live births. you could have more phases in life where like you hit rock bottom, but then Jupiter just like pulls you out of it. So it's like every time you hit rock bottom, you might just have this complete transformation, because that's like Pluto's scorpionic energy, right? Where all of a sudden it's like, you know, so everything's good in life, and then it starts like declining, and then you hit rock bottom. But every time you hit rock bottom, and you think you're about to die, maybe even like you're out freezing in the cold, all of a sudden Jupiter will kick in that 8th house and like give you a bunch of luck, wealth, and expansion. Now, Jupiter, that would almost be more Saturn in the 8th house, because Saturn, there's no reward without sacrifice. So definitely Saturn in the 8th house could do that to people, but Pluto does rule death. But, you know, Pluto and Saturn, Cronus and, can't remember, they fought for the underworld. So anyways, they're the really karmic planets, but they'll make you go through sort of hell and back to get your rewards. But Pluto or Saturn there could do that. But Jupiter doesn't necessarily, you don't have to necessarily sacrifice for Jupiter to reward you, but Jupiter could, he's kind of like, if you think of a Sagittarius, which Jupiter rules, or even a Pisces, which Jupiter traditionally rules, they're not the most predictable signs. So it could be just kind of like, you can't rely on Jupiter necessarily, right? Because he's luck. So you might have like this streak of luck, like say you're a gambler and you might just be winning huge, depending where your Jupiter is, and then you go and you think you're going to keep winning, and then Jupiter's not activated at that time or something, or maybe he's not even really that strong in your chart, but some transit activated him, and then all of a sudden you have no luck. I looked at my mom's chart, and I think her Jupiter is like opposite her ascendant or something, and she always says, and you shouldn't say things, you know, out of your mouth is what will happen. She's like, I have no luck. Of course they won and I didn't win, and you got to work hard, because she's very, you know, Saturn and Jupiter ruled. She's like, we never have any luck, you know. I'm thinking, well, you keep saying that, so you never have luck, you know. But that could be okay. Anyways, so Jupiter in the 9th house, Jupiter traditionally rules the 9th house. So again, this is kind of like Jupiter on the ascendant. This would be the equivalent. So the last one we just talked about is Jupiter in the 8th or Jupiter in Scorpio, right? And then we kind of talked about like if you have Jupiter in the 8th, you might want to look at whatever house Scorpio rules, or where your Pluto is deposited, to get more of a flavor of what's, you know, if again, like if Pluto's in your 4th house and Jupiter's in your 8th, you might have, you might do really well in real estate, or again, you might inherit a lot of real estate. Anyways, so, okay, Jupiter in the 9th is travel, higher education, religious wisdom and knowledge, like actual religion, not just spirituality. So you might be someone that goes to a foreign country or foreign countries, especially because Jupiter rules foreign things, and so does Sagittarius. And this will be flavored by whatever sign it's actually in your 9th house, or if you have this in Sagittarius, whatever house it's landing in, whatever traditionally rules that house. So if you have Jupiter in the 9th house, if you have Jupiter in Sagittarius, but it's in your 5th house, again, you might be kind of back to what we were talking about yesterday, known for travel. You could be like a great travel influencer, because 5th house is fame. But if you have Jupiter in the 9th house in Leo, it could be the same sort of thing. You're well known for traveling. Higher education, you could be a really well-known professor if it's in the sign of Leo. But you're most likely going to be very educated. School was probably very easy for you if you have Jupiter in the 9th house. You could be very into whatever religious beliefs that you have. You might know a lot of different religions, or you might like be a preacher, or 8th house is going to be more the occult, kind of going back to the Scorpio theme that we were just talking about. So if you have Jupiter in the 8th house, you might be because Jupiter rules higher religious knowledge, you might be, and 8th house is the occult knowledge, it's secrets, it's where we keep secrets. So you might have a lot of secrets. You could even be a counselor, like say, I kind of segued here, but if you have Jupiter in the 8th house in the sign of Libra, you could definitely be a counselor that keeps people's secrets, or almost like a priest that, you know, takes confession, right? So Jupiter in the 9th house, it's like, if you're a Mormon, you know all of the books. If you're a Scientologist, you're probably one of the higher levels. If you're, Catholic, you know all the prayers by heart. Okay. This is if you're just I don't want to say just, if you're Christian, you might know the whole Bible front and back if your Jupiter is in the ninth house. It could go to more occult knowledge, especially if you have Jupiter in the ninth house in Scorpio, which rules the eighth, right? But for the most part, it's going to be higher religious knowledge, higher education. You may not believe in religion at all, but you probably are very highly educated if you have Jupiter in the ninth house. And again, it probably came easy for you. Probably a professor in some kind of philosophical subject. If not, then you may just be very philosophical in your thinking and your communication, depending how he's aspected. You might travel a lot, have a real interest in foreign cultures. This kind of like Jupiter in the seventh, Jupiter in the ninth could bring you a spouse that's from a different culture. You might meet them in a foreign land, especially if you're a woman. You might meet them while traveling long distances. Jupiter, let's go to Jupiter in the 10th house. Jupiter in the 10th house is Capricorn, so Jupiter and Capricorn are at the 10th house. It's kind of like, especially if it's in the sign of Leo, but if you have Leo on your midheaven, which is the 10th house, and Jupiter there, you're going to be probably, if not, I mean, you're Jupiter, 9th, 10th, or 11th with Jupiter, depending on what sign it's in and how it's aspected, it's going to bring you a lot of attention and fame. You're not really going to be able to hide. Like, you're the kind of person, you go outside, whether it's in your community or even online, and people are going to gravitate towards you and recognize you. So it might be really easy for you to create a following, because remember, in the wheel, these are the top. So this is the most public sector, is the 9th, 10th, and 11th. So if you have Jupiter anywhere up there, especially in a sign like Leo or Sagittarius, you just really, fame will come really easy to you. And Jupiter in the 10th, it could be very easy for you to climb to the top in any organization, especially a corporate one, especially if Jupiter is in Capricorn, or, for the Jupiters in Capricorn, you're going to be able to climb the corporate ladder. There's an actor, Dave Franco, has a lot of Capricorn in his chart. And so it's like he climbs within the structure, but most people don't think that acting has a structure, you know what I mean, from the outside looking in. So Jupiter in Capricorn, you're going to do it in a very structural way, but you're going to climb to the top slowly but surely, and Jupiter is just going to keep pulling you up and expanding you. So, some people work really hard and they get so far, like Jupiter on the midheaven, and whatever career, reputation, or status is just going to keep, bringing you up. But because it's Capricorn energy, you might feel like you have to work hard, but you'll keep getting rewarded. So it's not as like erratic as Jupiter in Sagittarius or the 9th, where it could kind of blink in or out based on transits. This will be like a continual expansion. It's not like, oh, Jupiter's there one day and I'm winning big at the casino, and then he's gone and okay. Jupiter in the 11th is Aquarius. This has to do with social networks. So this, especially for social media and influencing, is very good, especially Jupiter in the 11th or in Aquarius. You probably are going to be, you could either be a big TV star, like a news anchor or TV actor, or because film is ruled by the 12th and music is more 12th house. So you're going to see more musicians with their Jupiter in like their 2nd house or their 12th house. We're going to see more TV stars and social media, big influencers with their Jupiter in their 11th house. Or this could be someone just like a vast social network. Oh, my phone, like a notification clicked up. Okay, it's still going. I'm like cross-eyed here. This light is really flushing me out now. So let's see, Jupiter in Aquarius, you also may know like a lot of people. You're the type of person that people are like, oh, hey, could you set me up a meeting with so-and-so? Or people are talking to you and you're like, oh, I know them. And they're like, how do you know them? Like, and you just kind of know everyone, able to navigate really well that way. Let's see. So Jupiter, yeah, and also Aquarius can kind of rule higher minded ideas, like, you know, Aquarius are really into aliens, or like abstract is very Aquarius. So in, you know, Uranus is also technology, which is the ruler of Aquarius, but with Saturn as the traditional ruler, you could just, higher education for you might be more technically oriented. So, you know, depending if you have any Pisces there, you could probably, more people with Jupiter in Aquarius or the 11th house are going to be very tech oriented. So that could be like having that big, you know, black book of people, of networking. It's just the tech side of things comes really naturally for you if you have Jupiter in Aquarius or the 11th house. So again, it's kind of like YouTube. I'm always with Mercury square Uranus, I'm always like fighting the technology. But if you have Jupiter in Aquarius, it's just like that part came so easy to you that you're ahead of everybody else, because you're not tripping over the audio and the live stream clicking off and all of that, which I see some people with pretty big followings, like 200,000. I watch a true crime channel. It's a Crime. I love her. Linda, I believe her birthday is the same day as mine. I mentioned that before. You know, she's very into like the info and lining it up in a way that she can illustrate. And so I see her even struggle sometimes with the live streams and stuff. So I'm assuming her Jupiter's probably not in Aquarius or in the 11th house, you know, but she does have a good following. So, you know, she could have it's Jupiter squaring Uranus, and that could be, and then to wrap it up, Jupiter in the 12th. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of the 12th house and of Pisces, before we found Neptune or whatever, I guess. So, so Jupiter is, you know, foreign things, foreign cultures, kind of like Sagittarius energy. So Jupiter in Pisces or the 12th house. Pisces and all the water signs have a real musical element. You think like Kurt Cobain was a Pisces with a Cancer moon. People that have a lot of water in their chart, if they're not actual musicians themselves, they absorb music. They're, you know, water signs are much more emotional, or any strong water placements, music, and everybody has that sort of a relationship with music, but people with a lot of water in their chart know what I mean. It's just a whole nother level of stimulation and absorption. So Jupiter in the 12th house, you're probably, if you're not very, I mean, almost everyone I know that's really talented with a musical instrument has a strong, or singing has a strong Pisces placement, whether it's sun, moon, rising. So like if you have Venus and Mercury like me, you might be more inclined to write music. I think Einstein had Jupiter and Mercury. All right, I gotta go.